We have our lights and prepare the slides. And while you're doing that, we're going to start from the period about 200,000 years ago. Not 1619, not even what you would say 2,000 years ago or 6,000 years ago. We're going back 200,000 years. Now, I could take you back 14 million, but I don't want to keep you too long, and I don't want to blow your circuits. So what we'll do is we'll start at 200,000. Could take you 500,000 and put you on Mars, but you may not be ready for that. Let me deal with this 200,000. Next time I come back, maybe I'll take you back 14 million. See about that. In the Newsweek, on the cover of Newsweek, January 11, 1988, there was an artist's conception of Adam and Eve. I don't like the Jerry curls, but appreciate the fact that they did at least show them as Africans. That's my own personal preference. And within that issue of Newsweek was an article entitled "The Search for Adam and Eve" by a journalist, Douglas Wallace. And he says in this article, scientists claim to have found our common ancestor, a woman who lived 200,000 years ago. How long? And left resilient genes that are carried by all, how many? Of mankind. This woman is the mother of everybody on the planet, because some of these children she doesn't want, I'm sure, if she got any sense. But she's the mother of everybody that has ever been here, and everybody that will come here. Some of her children are deformed, but... Now, I better stop here and deal with this a moment and state that both the theory of evolution, and it's a theory, and the theory of creationism, it's a theory. And the theory of evolution talks about the stages of development of the geological periods of the earth, and man developing from about 14 million years through the ape stages and on up to various stages until he became a Homo sapiens sapien about 200,000 years ago. Homo sapiens sapien meaning wise thinking man. About 200,000 years ago, we can definitely identify the fact that these were modern human beings. The other formations from 14 million to that period, we're not sure of. We just know it was some stage of moving towards humanity if you go with the theory of evolution. But there's also the theory of creationism, which is the Bible story, the story in the Quran, and many other holy books which speak of human beings being created, the first human beings being created by a deity or by the hand of God. We can neither prove nor disprove either one of these. They are theories. And if it's your system of belief, I respect and do not attack that. So don't get angry with me because I didn't accept your system of belief, but I'm a scientist. And I have to present both sides of the story. But whether you go with the theory of evolution or the theory of creationism, they both agree on one essential fact. That the original people on earth, the first people on earth, were what? Black people, African people. Joel A. Rogers tells us in Sex and Race that both the Bible and science agree on a common origin for mankind. They also agree by inference that man originated in the tropics. Not in Paris, not in London, not in Rome, not in Palestine. He existed in the tropics. That is, in an environment where food and shelter were most easily attainable. And he says that, moreover, tropical man is never white. He is most often black or dark brown with flat nose, frizzly or woolly hair, and protruding jaws. This both science and the Bible has to agree on. The original human beings on earth, the oldest race in existence, as we deal with this portrait of the eternal people, part 1. Now, this, I think, is a better artist's conception of Adam and Eve. It makes them look more like people I know, Africans I know. And it puts the giraffe and everything and the elephant in the background, which is probably what it was like, because human beings developed on the African continent, not in this mysterious place called the Middle East, And Eden could only have been one place. And the Bible tells you that the river ran through there, through Ethiopia. And Ethiopia is only in one place then. And that was on the continent of Cush, as the original Hebrew calls it. So here's the proper conception of Adam and Eve. Here it is. Eve, the mitochondrial mother, in that Newsweek article. They codenamed her Eve, which means the mother of all living. Mitochondrial mother means this. I will explain it as we go on later. The thing I want to put emphasis on is that this woman, 200,000 years ago, lived among a group of women in Africa, in the southwest portion, which should be more properly called Akabu land, lived among these women, and a team of Berkeley and Emory University scientists, as well as University of Hawaii scientists, got together, and this is how they discovered this woman. Biologist Rebecca Can of the University of Hawaii analyzed the placentas of 147 different women from around the world, from different places from around the world. And in analyzing the placenta, the afterbirth, and in looking into that and studying the cells, they found something that was common to them all. And that was the mitochondrial DNA. What is mitochondrial DNA? Mitochondrial DNA is inherited only from the mother. Now, DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, which is the material that makes up the human cell, the genetic material which determines what you will be. That's your what makes you up genetically, what kind of person physiologically and even mentally that you will be. Here, in the normal DNA, is a mixture of genes from both parents, both the father and the mother. But in the mitochondrial DNA is inherited only from the mother, and therefore not a mixture of parental genes. By the study of these molecules, biologists devised the theory of a common female ancestor for all humanity. What did they say? Mama's baby, daddy's baby. And I don't say that to be derogatory, but in ancient times, the communal life was of such in many civilizations, their African civilizations, that you would always know who the mother was, but you might not know who the father was. Not that they were promiscuous or anything, but you had different systems of morals governing a particular body based on the needs of that people. You understand what I'm saying? But you always know who the mother is. She's the last one, as Bill Cosby said, she's the last one with it. So you always know that. The mitochondrial DNA. Now, naturally, if, therefore, this woman who lived among this group of African women is the mother of all people on earth, obviously, and she was an African, obviously the father must be what? A what? No question, because there were no other people on earth at the time. Reading from that same article, page 47, it says, most evidence in so far indicates that Eve lived in sub-Saharan Africa. Not even in the north, but in sub-Saharan Africa, the hottest part of Africa. Sahara, in the Sudan, in the land of the blacks. The evolution from archaic to modern Homo sapiens seems to have occurred only in one place. Where? Only in one place, these European scientists say. Only in one continent in the world. On one continent can you find all the prolificity of bones, of fossil remains which date back so far in antiquity, that are human remains. They are found on the continent of Akabu land. Some are found in other places, but they do not date as far back as those found in Akabu land, and even they are Africoid in their structure, which shows that the African traveled all over the world at one time. As Fabre de Oliveira said, they dominated the globe. The evolution from archaic to modern Homo sapiens seems to have occurred in only one place: Eve's family. And Eve's family, this is the code name for her now. They just gave her that code name, Eve. We don't know what the sister's name was. Could have been Sapphire, Caledonia, anything. We don't know. Then sometime between 90,000 and 180,000 years ago, a group of her progeny left their homeland, which was where? Where? Endowed, apparently, listen to this carefully, with some special advantage over every tribe of early humans they encountered. As they fanned out, Eve's descendants replaced the locals, eventually settling the entire world. They had a special advantage over anything else that may even have remotely favored human beings. I understand the Neanderthal existed at that time, but they were not fully human, we know. They had an advantage over everything else that may have favored a human being. They were the first people we can clearly identify as modern human beings 200,000 years ago, and they began to fan out around the rest of the world from the mother continent, Arkebu land, somewhere between 90 and 180,000 years ago. All right. I've talked about the woman's role in procreation and how prominent that role is in procreation. We all know how prominent mother is. We all know, as Dr. Yusuf Benjo-Channon teaches us, that the first heaven that any human being knew anything about was the womb of their mother. And that men spend their lives trying to get back to heaven at all ages. Even at my age, I still try to get back to heaven as often as I can. And they looked at the black woman and her body as sacred and divine, and would not have been approached in the ancient world in a disrespectful manner, or it could have caused you your life. The vagina of woman was the sacred portal of heaven, from which came life into the world. Her womb was holy and divine. The Catholics picked that up later and say, Mary, Mary, Mother of God. That concept existed 200,000 years ago. The Mother of God, the divine queen of the universe, the mother goddess. That's why you look in ancient times and you find mother worship dominated the planet long before the thought of God or the Creator as a father, because of the tribute that humanity paid to their mother for carrying them those 9 months. For even though the father had planted the seed, she was the one who carried, nurtured, developed, brought it forth into life, and continued to nurture that life after it came to life. No wonder everybody looked back to their mother to give thanks. Not that they didn't give thanks to their father, but special position was given to mother. It was also believed that she had that contact with heaven or spirituality or with God, because she had the relationship of knowing what it was like to hang between life and death while bringing new life into earth. She had a special relationship, and therefore the first ministers on earth, the first priests on earth were priestesses. The first oracles where people went to find out something that they wanted to know was the high priestesses, the black woman, because they figured that she must have a special knowledge, since God gave her the privilege and the power to hang between life and death while giving birth. Do you understand what I'm saying? I hope I'm not being too esoteric tonight. But that is the deep principle that made Africans so great in our ancient civilizations, and you find evidence of that all over the world. Now here is Ptah fashioning the cosmic egg upon a potter's wheel. One of the things you have to understand about ancient Kemetan symbology and ancient African symbology, Kemet is the proper name for Egypt. The people call themselves Kemetans. What you have to understand about that is that the gods and goddesses did not mean these people worshiped many gods and goddesses, but that these were symbols of natural forces, scientific symbols of natural forces. Just like on a computer, you press the symbol, but that symbol is not the thing, it only what? Represents that thing. These gods and goddesses represented certain principles. And here the god Ptah represents the earth and also the role of the male in the procreation process, because it is he who disseminates the spermatozoa into the fallopian tube that goes down into the egg in the womb of woman. So that shows his role. Why is it an egg? Because the vagina of woman is shaped in an oval shape, because the seed is taken into a what? An ovary, which is a what? Egg. Our ancient high culture scientists knew that all humanity came from an egg, and therefore they looked at the universe and they saw that everything moved in a cyclical motion, that the planets moved in a cyclical motion around the sun. So they called it the great divine cosmic egg. And they saw that when water would go down a drain, or when a tornado would come, or when the wind would blow, it had a vortex shape similar to the shape of the woman's vagina. So they said that all the world came out of the universal cosmic egg. They saw the correlation between space and that which was on Earth long before Johnson's Space Flight Center or the space program in America or anywhere else came into being. They understood space travel that well and the connection between Earth and the heavens. And they said it was all exemplified in the ovaries of the black woman's eggs. That's how deep that was. That's powerful knowledge that was. And they built complex sciences off of that kind of knowledge. Sciences which defy the world today. Sciences was so heavy that when you went to the universities in ancient times in the mystery system, when you went to the University of Luxor down by the Nile River, in order to get all your degrees, you had to study for 47 years. And you had to master the 42 books of Jehudi before you considered to be a truly educated person. That beats anything that exists in the world today. And the high priest, when you got your learning, you didn't get up to 33 degrees. You got how many? 360 degrees, which represent the circumference of the earth. A mason would fall apart. The last poet said as high as they could go was 33 degrees without falling apart. They try to tackle this knowledge as who was that comedian, Mama, what was her name? Miles Babley said, one of my thoughts would blow your brain open. And if they were to try, and they did try to tackle our knowledge, it drove them crazy. So what they did was buried it, hid it. They can't even decipher most of the hieroglyphics. They just keep it hidden so that we can't get to it. Because they know once we get to it, if we crack it, that's it. It's all over for them, because we'll be back in tune with our knowledge. That's how heavy that was. And the heaviest one, the leader of all of the teachers at that time, had 360.4 degrees. Now that's going out of the circumference of the earth. You in space then. So terrible, he had to shave his head clean, or his hair fell out from all that knowledge. So to keep from falling out, he just shaved it clean. Say, we about to take you to this high level now, so we're going to shave your head so all the electricity from this knowledge don't burn you up. You'll be electrocuted by it. That's how heavy the knowledge of African people was. I wish we had a larger screen for you to see this. This is Miss Nama, the Willendorf Venus. She was rediscovered in Austria in 1909 by European scientists. It is probably the earliest, the oldest known form of the human physiognomy that we know of, at least in existence. It dates back 20 to 30,000 years ago. What does she look like to you? Can you see her head well? Give me the next one so they can get a better look at her. Maybe they can see the head better there. The corn-rolled hair, the steatophagia. What is steatophagia? Ample posterior. That kind of posterior when sisters walk down the street, brothers say, Lord, have mercy. Hold on. Okay. This one, that one was found in Austria. This one was found in Mentone, France. This one was found in Grimaldi, Italy. Right, I'm going to stop right there. This one was found in Italy. And this is an artist's conception of it. This is called the Hottentot Venus. which is improper name, Hottentot, putting the emphasis on her ample posterior. Now this posterior, why were these statuettes found in France? Obviously African. Why were they found in Italy? Why were they found in Russia, Siberia, the Easter Islands, just about everywhere you can go in the world? Because between 40 and 100,000 years ago, there was a group traveling the world called Nubian Grimaldis of African people, dolichocephalic heads, long-headed people, prognosis, broad nose and thick lips, high cheekbones. How do I know that? Because they have exhumed their graves all over the world. And when they studied the bones, they found that the bones were Africoid. 40,000 to 100,000 years ago, there were no Caucasians in the world. Caucasians don't come on the scene till somewhere between 20 and 25,000 years ago, by their own admittance. Here these Africans are traveling the world. Now, European anthropologists and archaeologists refer to them as Grimaldi because the first ones were rediscovered in modern times in Grimaldi, Italy, in a cave there. I call them Nubian Grimaldi because we know that the people came from Nubia, land of the bow, in Africa, in the continent, the mother continent, Akebu land. And the reason why they found these figurines buried in all these graves is because when they dug up and exhumed the skeletal remains, they were clutching these figurines to their breast and they were buried in the fetal position. Why? Because there was the common belief in the world 40 to 100,000 years ago that my mother brought me here from her womb. When I returned to Mother Earth, I returned to the womb of the universe. Therefore, the way I was in her womb as a child waiting to be delivered, this is the way I returned to my Mother Earth. And the reason why they had the figurines, because it was a belief that if you didn't take some representation of the black woman, your mother, with you to your grave, you could not make it safely to heaven. That's where the first concept of angels came from. Read it in the book, because I can't describe it in that African woman, the original guardian angel, because they found a lot of these figurines with wings on them. But it's the very same feminine force which brought you here was the one that received you at death. In India, they took it to a high level. The black people who first settled there in the Ganges, at the foot of the Himalayas and the Ganges River, and in the, what is that other river, valley civilization there, Indus Valley civilization, who settled India, they called her the Shakti, the spirit which embraced you at death, gave you the kiss of peace, and took you safely home to the center of the universe to dwell with the ancestors. That was the concept of African woman in those days, and it was one of the things that inspired African men. So, here again are some of those figurines. The artist's conception of what is misnomer the Hottentot, who lived about 40 to 100,000 years ago all over the world. The symbol of worship. What did I say? All over the world. Where? I want to make sure you get this. Was the black woman's posterior. Her behind was worshipped all over the world 100,000 years ago. And was worshipped for at least 80,000 or more years. Because hers was the only cosmic mechanism that could receive the seed, hold the seed, and keep the seed for 40 weeks and then deliver it into the world. And they saw with that somehow a connection with the stereotypologia, and they said, this is a symbol of the divine crucible, the divine vessel, the cradle of all humanity. So they worshiped this, worshiped it as a symbol of divinity. Here is a modern day Khoisan woman who lives in the Kalahari. And you can see the similarity. They still have that stereotypologia, and I'm thankful that they have it. When you go to modeling school, what do those white folks tell you? Tuck it in. They're trying to tell, wow, in antebellum slavery, they were walking around putting bows on the back of them. What they say, the song, Western song, buttons and bows. They were putting bows back there to make it look bigger, put something there to make the pancake look like something. Because they got tired of white men. Now that I'm proud of that, I wish they'd never touched a black woman, but they got tired of them running after these finely built black women. And so now they tell you there's something wrong with you being that way. That was the mark and symbol of beauty throughout the world. Throughout the world, 100,000 years ago, the epitome of beauty and grace was the black woman. The hair and all. She didn't feel like she had to fix nothing. That she didn't have to attack her face and body because her face and body was divine. She just took good care of it. I don't know why the Lord keeps bringing that to fore tonight, but please don't blame it on me. If you want to get angry with somebody, get angry with the Creator. Right, Sister Masana? Here is a representation in this artist's drawing of one of the Kandaki of ancient Kush, which was generally ruled by the Queen Mother. That's what Kandaki means. As a matter of fact, the throne upon which a king sat represented the lap of his mother, because it was women who developed the system of governance, as well as mathematics, the alphabet. The first house was built by women as an extension of her womb. That's why even today on the continent you will see many houses built what? In the round. The cities were built as an extension of her womb. The city of Paris in France is named after one of our great goddesses, one of our deities. Who is it? Isis. Par-Isis is it in Latin, and they brought it into the French language to mean Paris. And the word for house in ancient Kemetan, or Egyptian as you call it, and the word for mother are one in the same in their language. That's how the connection was made. Well, this line of Kandakis, these great queens, ruled over a nation of people, an empire that is enigmatic in terms of its chronological existence. We do not know how old the Kushite Empire is. We do know this: everywhere you go in the world, you see evidence of some Kushite civilization. That Arabia came out of the Kushites, that India came out of the Kushites, that Stonehenge was built by the Kushites. Godfrey Higgins, Gerald Massey, Albert Churchwald, and other European scholars tell us that these people came over and developed and built the monuments in England and established civilization there before any Anglo-Saxons ever came to the island of England or to Wales or to Scotland. These Kushites. In the book, The Wonderful Ethiopians of the Ancient Kushite Empire by Drusilla Dungy Houston, she wrote in 1926, talks about all of these civilizations established by the Kushites. The word means people kissed of the sun. Now when the Greeks came along, they couldn't pronounce Kush, so they called them Ethiopians. Ethiopia. People with burnt faces. So that's where the word Ethiopia comes from, because the Greeks could not pronounce the word. That's why a lot of things in European language are spelled with a C today. They should be spelled with a K, because they couldn't handle a K sound for long. They hadn't developed speech. Now you heard this white man say that they didn't even, I'm going to tell you about another one too, they didn't even have a memory, let alone speech. These Kushites were magnificent people. Herodotus, the Greek historian, the father of European history, not of African history, because people were writing history long before Greeks knew how to write. Herodotus says, in the 5th century before the Common Era, he says that they were called the tallest and the most beautiful people on earth. And the average citizen, he said when he visited, lived to be 120 years old. Now, you might can keep me from being angry on some of these points, but I get mighty upset when I look at the world and see that a man who was so dissatisfied with himself has messed this world up so bad that when I was once born in this world, I was assured by natural means 120 years, and now I'm living in a world where if I make it to 70, I'm doing good. Now, if this does not make me angry, or want to take back power, or show to the world that this man does not belong in power, if nothing else does, this really should. And I was reading a book the other day, published by some Caucasian physicians who study gerontologists, and they said that humans are supposed to be able to live to 120 easily. I said, you know, I've been saying this all the time, and here they've come along and said that. 120 years old. The average Greek was living to be 20. They say when the Roman Empire was in its heyday, the average citizen was 22 years old. Anybody who lived to be over 50 years old in Europe at that time was automatically deified as a god. You had to be holy and a god to live that long. 80, no question. This has got to be God, because only God can live 80 years. This is in their own history. Africans were living 120 years, President Imad. I want my 120 back. We got to free some land. Because that's the only way we can do it. Free the land so we can get back to eating the way we're supposed to, having the type of life we're supposed to have with the exercise, and the main thing they found that could help you live to be 120, to live a life without stress. The main thing that kills us is stress. And the thing that is most responsible for the stress is the hostile economic environment in which we live. Making a living is supposed to be fun. Most people hate to go to work. Hate to go to work because you had to work at something you don't really want to do and be someplace you don't want to be. And that's what incensed Europeans when they came here, in the red man and the African who were already here many years before Columbus or anybody else got here, was living side by side and made their living from the things they enjoyed: hunting, fishing, fowling, weaving. All these things were happy tasks to them. They could do them all day long. Said, how dare you make your living so easy when I have to dig for a potato and juniper root and eat raw meat? We got to change this. You can't have that. So now here we are, living up under the threat of every kind of disease. New diseases coming up all the time. I know it sounds like racism in reverse, but I'm going to say it, and I hope you don't hold it against me. The man is a disease himself. I mean, ugly is as ugly does. And if you do ugly, you're all ugly. How come we could run a world, a civilization, for hundreds, thousands of years? We don't know how old African civilization is. They have looked down through the earth with microwave beams in the Sahara Desert and found civilizations that are at least 200,000 years old. Not in the hunter-gatherer stage, but highly developed civilizations. They found iron smelting mines that date back over 100,000 years. What kind of technology, what kind of knowledge do you have to be able to smelt iron? Now we can do all of that and still remain intact with the earth and live to be at least 120 years. That's not our oldest, that's our average age. This man come along, get all this, and you're living less time. Now, if that doesn't say something is wrong with you, and you don't need to get out the way and let righteous people take over, I don't know what does. Be better for him if we were in charge. But he's doing better than he ever was. I mean, after all, 60 and 70 is better than 22. It's a plus for him and a minus for us. And I've got to quote Minister Farrakhan in his composition, "The white man's heaven is the black man's hell." And truer words have never been spoken. What's good for us is bad for them. What's bad for them is good for us. Truer words have never been spoken. Because ever since he's been enjoying, I've been in hell. Let's move on. Here is one of the Kandaki that represents the period about 331 before the Common Era. Now, note I mentioned that the Kushite Empire lasted for thousands upon thousands. Some say it may have been millions of years. I don't know, just many stories. Can I see that one too well? So you can cut the light down a minute so you can see it. I will describe it verbally. Here are two African elephants, not India elephants, because the largest elephants in the world are Africans, the largest living mammals on earth, elephants. Sitting between those two elephants is a Kandaki, a queen of the Kushites. Alexander, misnomed the Great, decided to conquer the world. And he went down into Kush, or what the Greeks called Ethiopia. And when he got there, this is what he saw. This big black woman sitting between two elephants, surrounded by 100,000 Nubian warriors. You can turn the light back on now if you wish. 100,000 Nubian warriors who had in their hands these bows that could only be shot by them. They were so strong. They were the ultimate weapon of that day. No Greek could shoot it. Alexander looked at her and them, and she asked him, she said, "What you want up in here, boy?" It's your little scrawny self. And history tells us that Alexander went north, south, east, and west, but he was bisexual, mostly homosexual. History verifies that, and he probably said something like, "I come to conquer the world, honey." And she probably told him, knowing Sapphire put her hand on her head and started shaking her head and said, "You better take your faggot behind on out of here. You may have been happy when you got here, honey, but you ain't gonna be happy when you leave." And he looked at all them warriors, her sons, standing around their mama, ready to kill bricks for her. All their mama had to do was say, "Go after it, boys." Shame. They would have been gone. See, she could call them that because she was their mama. She respected them as men, so I don't want you to get that wrong understanding. But the queen represented their mother. Say, "Go ahead, my sons, take care of business." And you never heard of Alexander anymore. He would have been swallowed up. So Alexander looked at that. He looked back behind him. He went home, looked at the Kemeton Sea, which they call the Mediterranean Sea, threw a spear at it in frustration and said, "I have no more worlds to conquer." Went home, drank himself to death, and died. You don't be careful, Sapphire drive you to drink. She wiped that white boy out. And not only that, when he got back home, he found out that his lover, unfortunately a black man, I'm sorry to say, but I got to tell the bitter with the sweet, the king of Cletus of Bactria, got tired of Alexander and wanted him a woman, and so that broke his heart. And he killed him. After he killed him, his lover was gone. This black woman had chumped him and wimped him out. He had nothing to live for. So he drank himself to death. That's why I don't call him the great. That's a misnomer. He may have been great till he met with Sapphire. She took care of that. She can make you or break you. One way or the other. She broke him, which is what she was supposed to do. Sister Messiah. You still with me? You all right? Let me know if I'm holding you too long. I'll be finished in a minute. Here are Bardarian iron smelters, one of the nations which helped to make up the Kemeton Empire. They were made up of many African nations in the area in the Nile Valley. The Kemeton Empire, I believe, dates back as far as 18,000 or 17,500 BCE, because that is when agriculture was first developed in the Nile Valley. And they use that, and they say it was developed by Osiris and Isis, or that's what the Greeks called them. The more proper term is Osar and Aset. So if that be the fact, then we would have to trace the Kemeton, or what you call the Egyptian Empire, back at least 18,000 years ago, its foundation. No empire in the world has ever lasted that long. Neither Greeks, nor Rome, nor the Holy Roman Empire, nor any empire has ever lasted 18,000 years. None has ever lasted over 1,000 years outside of African empires. None that we know of. They were among the metallurgists, the iron smelters of that day. When the oldest iron smelting mines was rediscovered and recorded in the Washington or in the New York Times, dates back 43,000 years ago. In Swaziland, in Rwanda, around Lake Nyanza, because there is no Lake Victoria in Africa. There is none. There's Lake Nyanza. In fact, the Encyclopedia Britannica, volume 17, the 1938 edition, tells us that thousands, how many? Of iron, copper, what else? Iron, copper, gold mines were found all over southern Africa. What kind of technology do you need to develop those mines? You have to be beyond the hunter-gatherer stage to do that. Anthropologists go in to study us, and they study the hunter-gatherer stage, what they call cultural anthropologists. and tried to ignore the great civilizations which smelted and developed iron. Not only iron, but some scientists tell us that these very Vidarians, about 4,500 years ago, were producing blue steel. Oh, he got stretched out now. He's gone crazy now. Well, Ivan Van Sertima tells us in his editing of the Journal of African Civilization, the volume entitled Blacks in Science, Ancient and Modern Times, that they have rediscovered a steel mill that produced carbon steel, which dates back about 1,200 years before Christ. They have found it in Tanzania. Don't quote me, it's either 300 years or 1,200 years before Christ. It was before Christ. That's how old that is. That's before any Romans or European or anybody knew how to make steel. The Romans didn't know how to make steel. And you have to know how to bring that furnace up to very high degrees that was only rediscovered in the latter half of the 19th century by Europeans. This is something Africans knew how to do, produce carbon steel. Steel. Back in those days. You bushy-haired apes who knew nothing and was waiting for white people to come and enslave you and civilize you and teach you about God and Jesus. You didn't know nothing until they came, but yet you knew how to produce steel, but you didn't know anything until they came. Forgive my sarcasm, but I have to reflect on that. Next. Here we come into the land of the giants. I have one lesson I teach, one module I teach in the course Dimensions in Black Dynamics, which is entitled Kemet, Land of the Giants. Because as one European scholar has said, they built like men 100 feet tall. They were little people themselves by comparison, but everything they built was on a grand scale. Why? Because their what was big? Mind was big. When your mind is big, you do what? Big things. Nobody has ever built like these people. Here is the Sphinx, who should be called Samarkand or Samarkis or some other name, because that's what the Greeks call the Sphinx. This is the Sphinx as it looks today, with the Great Pyramid in the background, which we'll talk about in a moment. Well, let me talk about it now. No, we'll talk about it in a moment. The next slide. This is what the Sphinx looked like before it was damaged. This is drawn by Francois Champollion, a French Egyptologist, because at that time, when Napoleon was invading Egypt, I'm using their terminology now, when he was invading Egypt, he said he was sent on a mission by Allah because he had accepted Islam, and he was a good Muslim, and he had to come in and deliver the Egyptians from the Mamelukes, who were bad Muslims. So here was one oppressor taking the land from another oppressor and taking it from the English. When he arrived and saw this humongous statue with this broad nose and thick lips and high cheekbones, looking down on him with a serene smile that said, "You don't know anything. You are a barbarian, Napoleon. I represent the culmination of thousands of years of science and history. What do you represent, little man?" He looked at it and he got angry and said, "Shoot the nose off that nigga. Kill it." So he's trying to kill something that's been there for at least 10,000 years. This white man didn't have no sense than to try to destroy a structure like that. And they shot the cannons at it. All they were able to do was damage the nose a little, but look at that side view. Do you know that? Look like my Aunt Virginia. I know you met this person in your travels. And you didn't even have to leave the country. You didn't have to leave Austin. But you have met this person. Napoleon met that person. upsetting, because there was a little black man down in Haiti that was whipping his behind, beating his troops in Santo Domingo. He was embarrassed all the way around. Then he figured, well, I can make myself feel better if I go over here in Africa and conquer something. And here is the culture of Africa looking him straight in the face, saying like Jesus, you may destroy the body, but you cannot kill the soul. Still standing today. Here's another picture. I like to focus on that. And let me read you something that one of the scholars that was traveling with Napoleon and helped to develop what they call Egyptology, because at the time they were enslaving Africans, they were trying to find ways to validate what they knew was wrong. So they said, well, they're inferior, they never had no history. They say, how in the world can you say that? You just saw the Sphinx. You just saw all these monuments built with look like black people. How can you say that? So they developed the science of Egyptology then, so they could explain it away and put them in a never land in the Middle East, wherever that is, and call them Mediterranean Caucasians. Did you know that Dr. Ben is a Mediterranean Caucasian? Have you ever seen Dr. Ben? Have you ever met Dr. Ben? Well, he's a Mediterranean Caucasian. Black as midnight, broad nose, thick lips, all of the beautiful Afrocoid features, but he's classified, because he came from Ethiopia, as a Mediterranean Caucasian. This is a man that's got some problems with himself. If he didn't have problems, he wouldn't risk skin cancer and get his skin all burned up in the sun trying to look like you while convincing you that you're ugly. Strange, isn't it? And the thing about this, once you come to understand that, your mind starts to get free. And once your mind is free, the rest will follow shortly. Nobody can do anything with it. Black children who receive this knowledge approach academics with a different attitude, because they see academics as not being external to them, but as being internal and a part of them, and a creation of their own genes, their own ancestry, their own being. They see it in that way. For your children to see this every day, you see a different carriage about it, a different look in their eyes. And once they get this into their hearts and souls, they won't be able to do those self-destructive things, because they'll know they're gods and goddesses. And you can't do this to the body of God and the goddess. I'm a temple of the divine. I was the first thing set on earth to represent God. So I can't hurt this. Count Constant de Volney, who went with Napoleon into Egypt, wrote this in his book, Visit to Egypt and Syria, and I'm not much longer. Before examining the contradictions circulating in the modern area, and let me read it, I'm quoting Diop there. Let me go on with Volney. This is what Volney wrote. When I visited the Sphinx, listen to what this white man, who himself was fighting to defend slavery of Africans in the world, this is what he wrote. When I visited the Sphinx, its appearance gave me the key to the riddle. On seeing that head, typically Negro in how many of its features? All its features. I remembered the remarkable passage where Herodotus says, and he's quoting Herodotus now, the father of European history, the Greek historian, who wrote about the 5th century before the Common Era. He's quoting him now, I believe it is in 1783, somewhere in there. And he says, I remembered this passage when he wrote, as for me, I judged the Chaldeans, they lived in Chalkis at the base of the Caucasus Mountains in Russia, to be a colony of the Egyptians, because like them, they are black with woolly hair. This is Herodotus, a Greek who saw them with his very own eyes. There are over 12 Greco-Roman scholars quoted by Sheikh Anta Diop, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, peace be upon him, in the Journal of African Civilization, Volume 1, who saw these people firsthand and described them as being black people. Also, when the Greeks first met African people, by their own admittance, they fell down and worshiped them as gods. Every Greek god and goddess was once a Cushite king or queen. I can trace every one of them. Zeus, Adonis, who's the rest of them? Venus, Aphrodite, all of them can be traced back to some African king or queen who had traveled the world and set up their civilization. Drusilla Houston tells us that all of those gods and goddesses was the white man's way of deifying the black man. So great were the deeds done by Africans in the ancient world in the time period that was called the Golden Age. Even the story of Sinbad the Sailor and the Arabian Nights are actually the retelling of the tales of Cushite sea captains who traveled the world doing trade and back and forth doing business with the various great cities and civilizations established over the globe. All of these things belong to us. Look at this wealth of information that artists can go into now, that writers can go in, that educate. Look at all that you can recreate and present to your children from this. All the world is ours. All we have to do is take it back now. And we'll rule justice. Don't worry, because what I hear you say, well, if black people get in power, we might mistreat white people. Well, they didn't worry about mistreating us. That didn't bother them one bit, except for a few. But I don't believe we'd act that way. We didn't before, when we ran the world. In fact, the thing that was one of our best qualities was turned against us. I'm not saying we should give it up because it makes us who we are. But one of our best qualities was our love of humanity, our willingness to forgive humanity, and our need to uplift humanity. Had we left them up in them caves, we might not have had no trouble out of it. We went up there and felt sorry for him. Lifted him up off all fours. He said that in his own. He said he was crawling around on all fours saying ugh. He said that. Shaved him up, washed him, because bathing was not on their agenda. I'm not being mean, I'm talking history. If they hadn't talked so bad about us and hadn't lied about history, we wouldn't have to do this now. But since you messed it up, I got to straighten it out. If I step on your feet, straighten it out. I'm sorry, but you didn't care. You not only stepped on my feet, you took my soul, man. So anything I say about you is, but I'm not being mean. I'm telling the truth. But this is what this white man says now. So let me bring it back now so you won't say that racist, mean, evil Ishakamusa up there talking about white people like that. This is what white folks say about white folks. In other words, the ancient Egyptians were true Negroes of the same type as all native-born Africans. That being so, we can see how their blood, mixed for several centuries with that of the Romans and the Greeks, must have lost the intensity of its original color while retaining nonetheless the imprint of its original mold. We can even state as a general principle that the face is a kind of monument able in many cases to attest to or shed light on historical evidence on the origin of peoples. Count Volney goes on to say further on in that statement that these very same people whom we despise because of their woolly hair and sable skin, who are now our servants, are the ones to whom we owe all the gifts of civilization, unto whom we owe the very gift of speech. Count Volney said that white people could not talk until they met black people. That's what a white man said. It's in that same book, Visit to Egypt and Syria, and it's recorded in Sheikh Anta Diop's work, African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality. He quotes directly from it. Now this is a racist, a man who hated Africans, a man who helped to participate in the enslavement of Africans, who stood up and admitted that we would not have anything if it wasn't for them. We wouldn't even know how to talk if it wasn't for these same people we are despising today. You still there? Not too far along in our journey now. We traveled along. We traveled from 200,000 years. Now we're in ancient Egypt. This is probably the oldest and the first type of pyramid, the mastaba step type pyramid. By the way, pyramids are not only in the Nile Valley and Giza. They're all the way. There are probably more pyramids in Ethiopia than anywhere else. Africans built pyramids all along the Nile River. And I'll tell you some more about that as we go on. Let me show you the man who built this. Worshipped all over the world as a god. See if you can bring that, tilt that some so they can see the face. Amhotep was his name. The father of medicine. Not Hippocrates, the Greek. At the time that Hippocrates was studying medicine, they were worshiping this man Amhotep under the name of Asclepius. He was a God of healing throughout the world. He was the first Christ to known as being a healer. Not only was he a physician, he was a mathematician, an architect. He was a multifaceted scholar like our own Sheikh Anta Diop and Dr. Yusuf Benjachanan in our age. Dr. Ben, I think, has 2 or 3 PhDs. But, I mean, can you verify what you're saying? Are these qualified scholars? Yes. I probably know more PhDs than I know everyday people now. There's so many among Africans. Because we knew they were going to try to raise that issue. So black folks say, your PhD isn't nothing. They went and got them. Dr. Ben said, I said, whatever they asked me, I said, yeah, As soon as they gave me that degree, he came out and started showing his behind. You know how Dr. Ben is. He said, in my mouth knew no Sunday. Start telling it like it is. So well qualified. This man was more than a PhD in his time. He's probably the one that had the 360.4 degrees. The pyramids of Giza with the Great Pyramid in the background there. The Great Pyramid covers 13 city blocks. Some of the stones used in the Great Pyramid weigh up to 150 tons. How many did I say? And they had to bring them 600 miles from a rock quarry in Arabia down to the Nile Valley. How did you get them down there? Now you see in the movies and some of these Time Life books on Egypt, you rolling them on logs. No way in the world you can get 150 ton stone to roll across a desert on logs. You have to have some other method of transportation to get it there. What kind of method of transportation did you have to get 150 ton stone? Not one, a whole lot of them. Bring them up 600 miles and then put them together in a structure where in the Arabs say in one proverb, all the world fears time, but time fears the pyramid. This is the oldest building in the world. There's nothing standing in the world, Empire State Building notwithstanding, that can hold a candle to this. And you built it. You built it in such a way that it could trap the sun's rays and the moonlight so that you could go down in its chambers. They're trying to figure out how did these Negroes paint all these things up here on these walls without light bulbs, because we don't see any evidence of oil lights. We don't see that. How did they get light in here? They built the shafts in these pyramids so that they could reflect the light not only of the sun and the moon, but of the very stars of the sky. So you could go in a chamber of the pyramid and it'd be lit up like fluorescent light. And his brother Malcolm, peace be upon him, taught us they painted their portraits with paint that has lasted over 3,000 years. And you can't even hardly get paint on your house today last 10. The way you see them here is not the way they originally looked. They were overlaid with marble and all kind of pretty stuff. Jewels and everything at one time. When European came, they stripped everything off they could. All they knew was something I could sell for money to get something to eat. His main motivation was his stomach. Because he was hungry up there in Europe. African know, in order to get this from one place to the other, it's going to take many hands to make the burden light. There's more than enough. That's an African term. There's plenty, you know. They said, there's plenty, brother. As we get this out of here, we all gonna have some. White boy say, oh, mine like a little baby. A little child want it all. To myself, no, this is mine. That's how come I tell you he hadn't grown up. We taught him everything, but he never grew up mentally. He never grew up spiritually. So in spite of how you may think he looks in the world, he may sound so educated, you know, and all across the board, you guys, and you may think that sounds educated to you. He's still a child. An unruly child, a harmful child, a bad seed type child. What's that little doll they got running around killing things in the movie? That kind of child. You don't have to take my word for it. Look at his history. Not only look at it, look at what he's doing in the world today. He can't go in anybody's country and act right. Give me this, this is mine. You say, you can't come in. You're welcome to some white man, but you can't come in and take all my things, you know. What? You're a terrorist. mean person. I'm going to kill you. And so he does, because he cannot have his way. But Dr. Francis Welsing points that out. White people hate black people because white people hate themselves. And they hate themselves for several reasons. One is because they have a lack of color. They were not born with the blessings of the sun. They have a lack of melanin in them, and they hate the rest of the world for looking so good and they looking so pale. They really do. So therefore they figure the only way I can control it is to dominate it and redefine it. The second one, which really scares them to death, is their numerical inadequacy. All people of the color of the world are more prolific than they are, able to procreate more than they are. And they are so small in number. That's why they have to, that is one of the reasons why it's so difficult to get along with them, because their motivation is fear. If I let you come in power, you overwhelm me and you'll do to me what I do to you. Because he cannot envision anybody acting any differently than he does. As President Imari once taught us, he is a relentless animal, so he thinks everybody else is like that. So Brother Malcolm says, consequently, when you sit down to talk, y'all not talking the same language. Your motivation is not the same, even though you'll shake your hand, pat you in the back, say, come back, talk anytime. Yes, let's talk about this. We need to do something about it. Still, we'll see what we can do, and still go back and plot and scheme against you. Maybe give you a little something, but not what you're supposed to get. That's because when you sit down to talk, the objective is different. Brother Redman knew, say that man speak with a funky tongue. He learned the hard way. I'm not saying this to be mean, but I am, and they say, well, man, you sound like a man afraid of white folks. Yes. Not afraid of them as one man towards another, but I cannot trust this cat. His history says I cannot trust him. The moment I let go and trust him, he does me in. That's what I'm afraid of. What I'm afraid of is not him, is not the ability to be myself, because I got to stay on guard all the time. Black people by nature are happy people. We're happy people. We like to live life happy, enjoy life. With this cat, you got to always be on guard. You can't even sit down and watch a television program with your children because he has done something in there to attack you psychologically, so you have to point that out. You can't go to the movie. He got to kill black people in just about every movie he makes. If he does not kill them, he has the black woman raped or disgraced in some way, or he has the black man acting like a total fool. That's because psychologically, he needs to think this way about us in order to keep himself going. He cannot accept this reality, or it will drive him insane. That's a difficult thing, because I hear black folks say, I didn't mean to get into this commentary, I want to get back. I hear black folks say, well, if we teach this to white folks, they need to know this too, you know, and maybe they'll act better towards us. They already know it. Maybe the average redneck doesn't, but upper class ones know it. You go into any rich white home and you'll find more books on African history than you will in most black people's homes. So they know this knowledge. They just want to make sure you don't know it. But you cannot stop a thing whose time has come, a moment in history whose time has come. Okay? This is one of the reasons why we call it Kemet the land of the giants. Look at that. That's about 80 feet tall, carved out of the side of a granite mountain. The blood just went into the mountain. Pop, knock, bam, beat, beat. Carved this out. Look at the sublime features and the detail there. 80 feet tall. Granite, the hardest stone in the world. You know how we are. He wouldn't go to something like soapstone. No, I'm going to take the hardest thing and chop it out to represent me. Okay. Here it is again, the Ramesses. 4 of them, 70, 75 feet tall, to represent Ramses II. Carved out of the side of a mountain. This is an ancient Kemet. Now, your civilization that lasted maybe 18,000 or more years. Here's the temple of his wife. Here, carved out of the side of a mountain. Gigantic statuary. Look at that beautiful sister there. Here is, I think this one is 70 feet tall, of Ramses II and his wife. Why am I putting a lot of emphasis on Ramses? Because when they brought the Ramses II exhibition to Dallas, Texas, one of the cultural attaches in Egypt, the Arab Egypt, said that the indigenous that Ramses II was not an indigenous African, that the indigenous African had nothing to do with the building of the ancient Egyptian civilization. Dr. Ben was in Nubia doing an archaeological dig. He threw down the spade, jumped on a plane, and flew in. Ivan Van Sertima was up at Rutgers. He put down, closed the book, put down the pen, flew in. Asa Hilliard III, Dr. Don Finch was down in Atlanta. They left the classroom, got on a plane, and flew in. All these African scholars descended on Dallas at one time. When they left, the Egyptian government issued an apology. Said, we didn't tell him to say that. We didn't say that. Sheikh Anta Diop went into the Cairo Museum, one of the few times he was admitted, scraped a centimeter off of Ramses II's mummy, took it back to Dakar, Senegal, in his laboratory, put it in an ethyl-benzoate solution, and when he put it in the light, it came up fluorescent. That means not that some melanin is present in the skin, it means what? That a high degree of melatonin, a navy blue black kind of melanin, is present in the skin. When he went back, they wouldn't let him in again. When Diop died, he was still fighting, trying to get back into Cairo. They let the French Egyptologists, the English, the Germans come and just destroy some, grind them up for powder and sell them as aphrodisiacs, all that. But they told him, we can't have the mummies destroyed, you know. Wouldn't let him get back to get another centimeter. Ramses II. Do you know this brother? Have you ever met this brother? Now, be honest now. Have you ever met him? Well, you saw him yesterday. Saw him yesterday. Saw him day before yesterday too. Yet he lived back in the 19th dynasty. That's Ramses II. Close up. In Kemet. Here is Ramses II in his war helmet. Where did the style of that war crown come from? The Watutsi warrior. That's where the style came from. This is taken from Diop's African Origin of Civilization. Look at the similarity there. The Kemetans themselves said when they prayed, they turned to the south because that's where all the gods came from. All the goddesses came from. The pharaohs always married, if they wanted to be strong pharaohs, they married sisters from the south in Kush and from Nubia, because they said those women were the women who had the closeness with the gods. They could tell you the future. They were clairvoyant, and they could tell you to keep you out of danger, to make you strong as a king. They had the wisdom to share with you, so that's what they married. This is the first Christ dying and resurrected Savior that we know of in the world. Look at those eyes. Look at it. It is a statue, probably the oldest in existence. A statuette of whom the Greeks call Osiris, which should be more properly called Asar. Look at it now. Worshipped throughout the Egyptian empire, all those 18,000 years, probably the most prominent deity, and worshipped by everyone else in the world, even you today when you go to church on Sunday, because the person you call Jesus and the story you tell about him are the same stories that were told about this man 18,000 years ago, Osiris. Here is a statue in granite that was not finished of Osiris. Look at the nose, the broad nose, the thick lips. Look at it very carefully. Here's his wife, the first Madonna and child. Isis, the Greeks called her. Her name is Aset and Horus. When the European Christians couldn't offset this form of worship that was circulating in the world in their day, They therefore went in and renamed all the statues Mary and Jesus. And the most sacred icons in Europe is of the Black Madonna and Child. If you don't believe that, the head of Christendom, the Pope of Rome, when he goes to bed every night, when he goes to bed, he prays to a black woman and child, and every morning when he gets up, he prays to them. Oh, you don't believe me? Go get the book. It's a pictorial called John Paul II. And look at his cot, and look at the picture he has over his cot. One of the first things he did when he assumed the office of the Pope was to send hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars back to Poland to do what? To embellish the shrine of the Black Madonna there. Every year around Easter they take these shrines of the Black Madonna and Child, which are patterned off of Osset and Horus, and they take them through the village, and the people pray to them and pin money on them because they believe that these black women and children, even though their statues, have the power to heal them. Now that's what white people believe about the power of black people. In Italy, in Spain, all around the world, that's what they believe about us, and what do they have us believing about ourselves? So when they say Mary, Mary, Mother of God, they're talking about this black woman, Osset. They say that the science of agriculture was founded in the Nile Valley by Osset and Asar, and that also Asar was the first maker of beer and wine. Beer and wine was used for quite different purposes back then than it was now. It was all right to drink something to feel good, but they didn't have any alcoholics back there. People didn't go to excess. They did everything in moderation. So it was all right. It was made from the ground. So here is Earl Sweeting's in his book African History. His paintings are beautiful based on his years of research. Here is his artist depiction of the Kemetons making beer. Thutmose III. Look at those Africoid features of Thutmose III. Many white historians call him the Napoleon of antiquity. It should be just the opposite. They should call Napoleon the Thutmose of antiquity. But then they can't call Napoleon the Thutmose of antiquity, because the territory that Thutmose III ruled was all the way from Spain all the way over to Mesopotamia. He was still sending the Phoenicians out. It's the ships under his rule that the Phoenicians sailed in went as far as Cornwall, England, to mine tin. Napoleon's empire never stretched that far, so they cannot even be compared. This is one of the great pharaohs of the 18th dynasty. I'm showing you these because people tell you that the Egyptians or the Kemetons were Mediterranean Caucasians, and they were not indigenous Africans. You be the judge for yourself. This is written in stone. These are stone images. You can't erase them out. Even with cannons, you can't erase them out. Hatshepsut. Look at that sister in ceremonial beard. Look at her. In case you wondered if she looked like Elizabeth Taylor or Gina Lollobrigida or somebody, now you know. What Hollywood produced and what is, in fact, historical reality are diametrically opposed to one another. Hatshepsut's daughter in the arms of her male secretary, Sanmut. Look at that pretty child. A lot of you have children look just like her. Amenhotep III. Look at the lips on that blood. They tried to tear up his nose, but you can still see how broad and pretty it was. Amenhotep III stretched the empire of Thutmose III even further. He was so magnificent in his deeds that the Greeks worshipped him as Memnon. They called him God Memnon. Here is the Memnon Colossi, or the Colossi of Amenhotep III. And they say every moment these are 75 feet tall each, also made out of granite stone. And they said that every morning when the sun rises, you could hear the voice of Memnon, that's what the Greeks called him, calling to his mother, to Morava, whom they call Eros Eos, the dawn. Very beautiful story. And why the reason that was because when the moisture in the morning would move across this particular statue here, in the evaporation of that moisture, it would make a musical sound as if singing to someone. So it made the statue seem like it was singing. Every scholar in the ancient world, Greek, Roman, African, whatever he was not considered to be a scholar unless he had made an inscription at the foot of the base of the colossi of Amenhotep III. Instead of us going to them for accreditation, they had to what? Come to us for accreditation and to get their degrees. Here is his lovely wife, Queen Tayi, his principal wife, whom he loved so dearly, he built a lake. I forget how many miles that lake was. I believe it was 100 miles, but don't quote me on it. It was a big lake, artificial lake he built for this queen, so they could go out in their chariot, their Cadillac or Mercedes-Benz, and drive along the lake. Probably the richest king in the world at that time, also known to be the most generous king of his time. One of the things about being rich, it's not bad to be rich, but if you are rich, you have the responsibility to be what? Generous. And how can one African be rich while the other African is hungry? So if you're a rich African, you have what responsibility? To help solve the problem of hunger. A good ruler makes sure that what? Everyone in his kingdom is well off. All right. Here is his son, Tutankhamun. Looks like my son, Imari, named after President Imari Obadele. The boy Tut, or the King Tut here, which was stolen out of the tomb, and they say that every one of them that stole it received the curse of Tut too. All right. Here is Tut's brother, Akhenaten, who they say is the father of monotheism. Africans always believed in the one God concept, they just expressed it in many ways. They never believed that the other deities was the one. They had such a sacred regard for the one, the unmoved mover, the unknown one, that they didn't even build a temple to one. And here you walk around saying that in order to find God, we have to come to your church, to your mosque or your synagogue, because now you are so big and bad, you have confined God in your house or between the pages of your book. Now, if that isn't arrogance, I don't know what is. And there are people who will teach you that. If you don't come to this church or this house of worship, you can't find God. The Creator is in every leaf, in every cloud, in every blade of grass, in all of the water that runs in every stream and in every river. That's where the Creator falls. And you're going to tell me you can take it and cap it up in your house on Sunday morning and I got to come there and meet with it? That's arrogant. I'm not putting down the church, but when you go that far, that's blasphemy. And so many religions say, this is the only way to God. The only way you can know God is our way. That's your ego messing you up. That's your insecurity making you think that in order for you to be secure about what you believe, everybody else has to believe it too. But Akhenaten was not the father of monotheism. He taught a form of monotheism, and it was a political struggle, not a religious struggle, which was one and the same in those days. The priest of Amun-Ra had the power, and they did not back him on the throne, so he came up with this new religion called Atanism. And he took the same deity, the sun, which represented to the Egyptians the power of God in this solar system, whom they called Amun-Ra, he called it Aten or Atan. And in so doing, he turned the priest against him, and eventually he lost his power as king. That's what it was about. He wasn't the first one to worship the one God, as many Egyptologists will tell you. Here is King Tutankhamun, a statue of him going to the hunt in black ebony to symbolize the color of his body, and you can see his Africoid features there. One of the, I think, the most beautiful pieces in that collection of the Ramses II exhibition is, or the King Tut exhibition, Tutankhamun exhibition, is him being anointed by his wife as he sits on the throne, which represents the lap of Isis or Set. surrounded by the wings of Osset. That's where the concept of a guardian angel came from. You can read about that in my book, African Woman, the Original Guardian Angel. She is anointing him. What does that mean? Even after you became the king, you were not accepted as a king until you were anointed by your wife, who represented your mother, because your wife, your daughter, your sister, your cousin, any woman represented the mother, or the mother force to you. And his wife, this therefore represents his mother as she anoints him. It is only then that you become the king, because it was the black woman who created the system of governance. That's why the throne is there to represent her lap. Her son rules by her auspices. Other more important things to do, to develop civilization, to develop the socialization process. Your job, because nature gave you the natural strength, is to protect and defend it. Therefore, I give you a throne and laws to rule from. And therefore, in the ancient times, African man and African woman ruled the world as partners, not in competition one with the other. They were secure enough to do that as partners. She carried out her role, he carried out his role. Many times those roles crossed. Yes, I am the king, but who made me king? My mother made me the king. Yes, I am the mother of civilization. I'm the creator of the marketplace. I'm the creator of the socialization process. But if my son, if my husband does not protect it, it does not exist. So you see the relationship, the partnership there, which existed between the African man and the African woman. And believe me, if that partnership exists today, there's nothing they can do with you. Because if you respect the black woman the way she should be respected, and demand that the rest of the world respect her, and if they don't, you will deal with them accordingly, then you will be respected as a man. But not until then. Not until then. Now, Europeans say to be a man, you have to be able to dominate your woman, to be able to fight and kill things. That's because his idea of humanity is destruction. True, we should be able to fight and defend ourselves, but that shouldn't be your total preoccupation. Black man's a lover. You know, he'll fight you, but he'd rather make love, because that brings life. The other takes life. Okay. Here is Earl Sweeting's concept of the inventing of writing, or improvement on the invention of writing, being presented to Pharaoh Khufu of the 4th dynasty, because writing was not invented then. It goes back to ancient Kush, but this was one of the developments of improvements on a writing material. 2 writing materials. One was the pen, which they dipped in soot, and the other was papyrus, they call it in Latin. The Kemetans call it quama. And what it was made from the reed that grew on the Nile Valley. That was the only place that paper was produced in the world. And paper was produced in the world, and the paper industry was dominated in the world by African people for over 10,000 years. Why am I so excited about that? Why? Because when you pick up a piece of paper today, even some money, you take it out of your pocket and look at it, it would not exist if it wasn't for black people. So don't tell me it's all about money. There would be no money if it wasn't for you. They wouldn't have paper to print it on. They wouldn't know how to make paper. So the next time a white person picks up a piece of paper, you ask him, did you give praise and honor to the black man by saying Aman Ra? Yeah, you might lose your job. Don't do that. But that's what he ought to say. The whole industry of the world operates off what? Paper. Wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you. You look on the back of the dollar bill and you see it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you. That's your pyramid back there. That's your eye of Osiris on that dollar bill. So don't tell me it's all about money. It's got nothing to do with black or white, or what good is my history. All I need to do is make me some money. Well then, what do you do with the money? You take and give it right back to him. So what good does it do you anyway? Well, you got to have money to survive. A cat survives, a dog survives. And they're somebody's pet. If all you think about is money, you're somebody's pet. It is only when you realize that money, material things, nothing can compare with the glory of your African soul. And that is the most precious gift you have. Then when you get some money, you'll know how to use it. You won't act crazy like Michael Jackson and build a shrine to Liz Taylor when all these black people out here need some money. You won't go over there and try to buy the bones of the elephant man. Give $400,000 to a prince in England to go to school when black folks, they have closed black colleges over here now, and this boy done gone crazy I know he's going to try to sue me, but I ain't got nothing anyway. He's gone crazy. He got money now. What I'm putting emphasis on, if money is the most important thing in the world, well, he has it. $200 million or more dollars. If it's that important, how come he don't act any different? How come a lot of black people with a whole lot of money do not act any different? Because they're not in contact with their African souls. Money doesn't do you any good if you don't have that. But if you're in contact with yourself, money can do a lot of good. I'm not putting down money. It has its place until we come up with another system. Right? But money wouldn't exist if it wasn't for what? And paper wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the African. All right, are you sure about that? All right, you don't sound like it. Go ahead. You're getting tired. I'll be finished in a minute. See, y'all got to invite me back again. I don't get down here often. When I get down here, I don't know when to leave. Where I'm welcome. This is one of the first libraries on earth. When the Romans came into Africa and burned down what was misnomered the Alexandria Library, they burned up over 500,000 books. The knowledge that is in those books, we don't know what it was, how great it was. Burned it down like white people. Every place they've gone into our lands, they'll tear it up and then turn around and say, what have you ever done? Where's your writing? Where's your script? Where's your culture? It's in your libraries and in your museums. That's where it is. And you go to Europe and you'll find it sitting right there. Here they are making shoes. We're the first people to make shoes. Ha! What is that? How you know it's an airplane? It does look like a bird, doesn't it? And it was in the British Museum among the bird exhibits in a box until a person who had studied aerodynamics went there in the box and dug it out, and he noticed something. A bird tail is flat, horizontal. This is a vertical tail. There's no bird in the world with a tail like that. Only thing we know that has a tail like that is a what? Aeroplane. This was a glider, a model of a glider found in the tomb of a Kemetan statesman, nobleman called Padima. And we find that picture in the Journal of African Civilization, Blacks in Science, Ancient and Modern Times, Ivan Van Sertima as editor. That is, and it dates back 2,300 years ago. When did they come up with airplanes? We discovered the flying of airplanes in this country about 50 years ago. This is 2,300 years ago. They find this model glider buried. Here is Earl Sweeting's concept, artist concept of the Africans teaching the Greeks the alphabet and how to write. The Greeks were children to the Africans. There's no such thing as Greek philosophy. It is African theology transmogrified. No, it's not even transmogrified. It's corrupted into Greek philosophy. Here's the African teaching the Greek mathematics. How do I know that? Strabo says, Pliny says, I quote him in my book, God, the Bible, and Black Man's Destiny, says that mathematics came to the Greeks. Geometry came to the Greeks from the Ethiopians, who were what? Africans, from the Cushites. Who is this? Recognize him? He taught the great principles of life through fables and parables. Aesop, yeah, speak up. Aesop, the very word itself means black. Aesop, in Greece, teaching the wisdom of the ages. We always taught with animal tales. Rabbit tales is a form of the system that Aesop used to use. That's an African tradition. Here is another, this is a etching of Aesop. And you look at the nose, look at the lips, look at the high cheekbones, which states he was most definitely an African. Rogers proves that in the book, validates that well in World's Great Men of Color, in that chapter on Aesop. Who's this? Who is it? Who? Hannibal Barker, that's right. Hannibal knew no out. said, Hannibal, the Romans are at our back, the sea is at our back, and the Alps is before us. What can we do? Hannibal looked at him and said, what Alps? And went over. And then it came to the gates of Rome with the first tanks used in battle, which was the African elephant. And he would not have lost that battle if he had not been betrayed by another African, because the Romans could not fight the African style of Carthagis, misnomered Carthage, that Hannibal fought. He had that coin minted, that's his favorite elephant on the back, and we have it sideways. But he had that coin minted after one of his great victories. Here is a tracing of the coin. It's in the British Museum now. To give you a clear look of the corn-rolled hair and the apricote features of Hannibal Barca. The greatest military tacticians the world has ever known. They still study his strategies at the Annapolis Academy and West Point Academy and those other academies. Hannibal Barca. Oh boy, how did we get that one on the side? This is the African, representing the African who invented shorthand, and he's taking notes for the Roman Senate. Also during the Roman period, even though the Greeks and the Romans conquered us militarily and politically, we conquered them culturally because they didn't have any culture. And there was living in those days one named Terence, the African, who was the greatest writer of dramatic writings and plays. That is who Shakespeare copied, Roger Bacon copied, Francis Bacon and others copied in later years. Septimius Severus. We're in the last period here that we can cover the date, the Roman period. I have to come back and do volume 2 another time. Septimius Severus, a Roman emperor, an African. That's like the first African president of the United States or something. The thing that was so outstanding about Septimius Severus, that by and large he maintained his African-centeredness, not in all things, because he was a great persecutor of the Christians who were actually struggling against the Roman Empire for their liberation, that this black prophet Jesus, or Yeshua ben Joseph, had founded, the Nazarene movement. But he refused to eat a European food, and he had his food shipped to him from Africa, from his homeland. He refused to speak Latin the way they wanted him to. He spoke it with a pig Latin accent, as we would say. He spoke it with an African accent. What else did he do? He dug up the bones of Hannibal, Rome's greatest enemy, brought him to Rome, put him in a marble and gold sepulcher in the center of the city. Needless to say, he made the Romans angry, but he was too powerful. They couldn't do anything with him. He went to Egypt and went in the pyramids to study so that he could get in contact with the mystical knowledge of his ancestors. That's Septimius Severus, Roman emperor. I think that was what, 203 to about 198 to 211 of the Common Era. There were other Roman emperors as well, but this one is the most renowned. Here's a statue of him. His hair was a little bit curlier than the indigenous African with the real good snap-naps, but you can still see the apricote feature. We have variations of hair. The Dravidians have straight hair, but the epitome of beauty to us is the kinky hair. Just like the epitome of beauty to Europeans is the thin nose and the blonde hair, the epitome of beauty to us is the kinky hair and the broad nose and the thick lips. That is the epitome of beauty, although we have variations of that in the race. Here's Septimius Severus, again, an old fresco painted in Rome, and with his family. She's obviously mixed, Eurasian of some type, and his son Caracalla, who became the next emperor. Here is the one we close out with in the slide presentation. Who can tell me what this coin represents? Who? Don't be afraid, speak up. It represents Yeshua ben Joseph of the house of Panther, whom ye call Jesus the Christ. Minted in the 8th century of this era by Emperor Justinian II. And in Latin written over the top is our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. You see the corn-rolled hair and the kinky beard. and the Africoid features. These were the only images of Jesus or his mother or of his father Joseph that circulated in Christendom until the days of Michelangelo, when the European's ego had been beaten down so bad and his self-hatred has grown so deep that he figured he had better make images of the Holy Family to favor him, to make himself feel better. That's all that circulated in Christendom at that time. This is a coin. And on the other side, the obverse side of that coin, is an image of Justinian II with the straight hair and the alpine Caucasoid features. This was the early images of the one you call Jesus. With the Roman Empire, we will close out here. I always thought it to be strange that you can go into a church built by black people, by African people, with their blood, sweat, and tears, beautiful edifices, and when you get in that church, you see a portrait representing, an artist's portrait representing their deity, Jesus Christ, as someone who looks like other than themselves. When the historical truth is, Jesus was an African, and all images of him in early Christendom was that of an African. A few words to close out. Are you all right? You still with me? Thank you for being so patient and for waiting so long, but I had to at least get this much to you. There's a lot more there. We'll bring it back when we come. Now, we will close out with just a few statements. And one of those statements is made by Dr. George G.M. James, who wrote the book in 1954, Stolen Legacy, to whom we owe so much in the field of scholarship. And he said that the main purpose of all knowledge in the ancient world, on page 27 he stated that, was for us to become godlike. The object of all knowledge and of all learning and all material wealth was for us to, as President Mario Bedelli says in the book, The Foundations of a Black Nation, he says that we somehow have to get to free the land, not just for political power, but to get back to the place where we can pursue the knowledge again, where we can solve the mystery of life and death. We probably would have solved the mystery of life and death had our high culture civilization not been interrupted by these restless people who were unhappy with themselves, therefore unhappy with the rest of the world. No one knows how far we would have went in our pursuit of knowledge. After all, we were living to be an average of 120. How far could we have taken it? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said we could have lived at least 1,000 years before even thinking about death. Just think on that. So not only do you have to free the land and help to liberate the rest of the planet Earth for political power again, you have to do it so that all humanity can once again get back on its proper course. And we can live life as it's supposed to be lived. Become more godlike. The object of this knowledge is to be a reflection of yourself in the mirror of history. And when you look in that mirror, you will see God, because each one of us are in the image of the Creator. The Ancient of Days with the lamb woolly hair in the color of amber. And as Jeremiah said, he looked like the pitch of oven. Each one of us are reflections. When we look in the mirror, we see God. God shining forth from us. And if you truly believe in the Creator, then you know that you cannot accept a life other than the highest and the best that you can get out of it. That you are called by the mandate of God to put your faith to work and take a mountain and move it into the sea if you have to. But there is nothing that you cannot do, nothing that you cannot achieve which you conceive in your mind, because Almighty God would not have put the thought there in the first place if you were not capable of doing it. The Kemetans did it. They built like men 100 feet tall, didn't they say? Built those, they did it then, and that means we can what? We can do it now. All we need to know is that we can do it. And even though we may not know everything they knew, we can get along the path of knowing. The thing that made them so great in their knowledge was their divine mandate, their sense that they had a mandate from Almighty, a manifesto from the center of the universe, a cosmic manifesto to transform and make planet Earth into a paradise globally. That's why they went up in Europe and tried to civilize the Neanderthals and them people, because they knew they had to take that ice and turn it into a land of plenty. Again, they felt that was their mission, and while they were carrying out their mission, they got stopped in the process. But when we get it back again, the Bible says so beautifully, once we have done it, once we have overcome, affliction shall not rise up the second time. Let me close out with a text of scripture, because see, don't put the Bible down. This is your book. It's an African history book. You may not know it. Probably the only African history book that many black people have in their homes. It's written about a nation of African people. As messed up as it is, still has your history in it. And you just have to, and when you know your history, then you know how to read it. Going to Isaiah, the 61st chapter and the 4th verse. And this is what the Creator promises His people. Now, I don't care whether you want to call me a racist or whatever you want to call. It was Almighty God, the creator of heaven and earth, that decided that the first people on planet Earth should be African people. I didn't decide that. You didn't decide that. The Creator and Mother Nature decided that. It was also the Creator and Mother Nature that decided for thousands, maybe millions of years, there would be no other people on the earth but African people. And we don't get any Caucasians until after a catastrophe takes place on the earth, the Ice Age in Europe. That's when the Caucasian begins to develop in the ice pocket, and he comes out as a mutation. This is scientific. This is not mythology. He admits them himself that he's suffering from recessive genes. The Creator chose that. We didn't choose that. Mother Nature chose that. We didn't choose that. So we don't have to apologize to anybody for saying that we are God's chosen people. We're not denying anybody else's existence. We'll be fair with everybody. We always have been. We always will be. If they can behave, I wonder if they can behave. They can't behave, we better be prepared to do what we got to do. No more water but fire next time. That's what the Bible says. God gave, what did they say on the plantation? God gave Noah the rainbow sign. No more water, but fire next time. If you can't act right, we can put fire to your mind. You can't get some soul one way, you're going to get some the other. And this is what the Creator says to this people. I'm talking just to black folks right now. Don't worry about what I said about white folk, what I think about white folk. Don't worry about that. I'm talking to you. Once we get ourselves together, once we sweep before our own door first, then we can talk about saving the rest of the world. And everybody else in the world looks out for themselves and the world later. Mine is the only people that talks about saving the whole world before they get themselves saved. Save us first. And when you do that, if you have any energy or strength left, because that's more than a notion. I love my people. My people try you. But I love them, so you go through that with family. If you have any strength or energy left after you save us and liberate us, then you can go liberate somebody else. But you cannot do that before you take care of us first. And this is the message down through the ages that the prophet Isaiah sends to you today. And he says, and they shall build the old waste. They shall rise up the former desolations. And they shall repair the waste cities, the desolations of many, many generations. And they shall build houses and inhabit them. And they shall plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them, the new cities, President Mark. That's prophesied in the Bible, the new cities. They shall not build and another inhabit. What did it say? They shall not, we're building for somebody else now. But it said they will build them and plant them, and they shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For as the days of a tree are the days of my people, and mine elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain, nor bring forth for trouble. Much of what we work for, much of the taxes that we pay, go into their treasury that they take and use to continue to oppress us. The slave had to make the very change by which he was chained with. Here. So it says here, but that won't happen anymore. You won't be making these things that will come back and trouble you. Everything you create by the work of your hands will be for your own benefit. They shall not labor in vain, nor bring forth for trouble, for they are the seed of the blessed of the Lord. God says we are his seed. We are the seed of the Creator, and their offspring with them. Every black child that is born is divine. Every black child is precious, therefore must be protected by us. And it shall come to pass that before they call, I will answer. Good Lord have mercy. They said in the ancient times, in the golden age, that black people were so in tune with the Creator that they didn't even have to say a word. All they had to do was think it. And the prayer was fulfilled. That closeness with the Creator. We're coming back into that again too. You can feel it, you can see it, you can sense it in the air. We are returning to that place in the Creator that once we get in it, no one, it says in the scripture, no weapon that is formed against you can prosper. Once you get in that place and say, the Lord is on my side, whom shall I fear? What can man do unto me? When you walk in that power and in that light, nothing they can stop you with. I don't care how many tanks, I don't care how many guns, the K9s, K16, all kind of automatic weapons, nothing can stop Almighty God. So if you believe as much as black people say they believe in the Creator of the universe, then you will fear no man anywhere, and you will believe that you can achieve what you set out to do, and you won't let anyone stop you. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. This is the promise of the Creator, the Ancient of Days, who was here in the beginning of the world, and who created you as a manifestation of his glory and power on earth. This is the message that I leave with you today, my brothers and sisters in Austin. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. May the peace, blessings, prosperity of the Creator and our African ancestors rest with you and your loved ones now and forevermore. Amen Ra.